Today's show is sponsored by RX Bar. RX Bars are made with 100% whole ingredients and no BS. I think the BS stands for bad stuff. No BS. For 25% off, go to rxbar.com/soccer. Use the promo code SOCCER at checkout. rxbar.com/soccer. Promo code SOCCER at checkout for 25% off. Hello and welcome to the Total Soccer Show Gold Cup Final Review Special. My name is Daryl Grove and I'm joined by a man who has the beard of Tim Howard but not the Gold Cup medal collection. It's Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello. So you ended the hot take by awarding me a medal and then you began this one by taking it away?
Yep. It all evens out.
That's harsh. It's a little bit harsh, I gotta say.
Much like the Gold Cup, it all evens out. So yeah, it ends with USA...
Very much depending on your rooting interests, but yeah, I'll go with you on
I'm
that
really
one.
talking about the way the US started this Gold Cup with the games against Panama and...
I got you now.
Yeah, right? That it felt a little bit like, oh, this is not going well. And it ends with a late winner from Jordan Morris. It ends in glory. It ends with Michael Bradley holding that gigantic trophy. So now everything feels good.
Yeah.
We got all our emotions into the quick take, hot take, the previous episode. We recorded immediately after the whistle. This time we've rewatched it.
There'll still be some emotions in this one, but yeah.
We've rewatched it. We've done some thinking. So before we start analysing the goals, which is what I really want to do, I want to ask you, how did you feel during the quick hot take? You said that you were mostly positive, but you had some concerns. Were those concerns addressed when we did the review?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Is my answer.
What were your concerns?
I think basically what I was saying in the hot take is that when you're watching the game, when it's live, when it's a final, when it's very emotional, it's difficult to get like all the nuances at the same time because I think you and I tend to watch as fans on the first viewing and then we review every little bit on the second.
Yeah.
So on the first viewing, I hadn't really paid attention to like all the things that Omar Gonzalez had done, Graham Zusi, Matt Beasler, Jorge Villafana as well. So I was curious how good that backline looked upon second viewing, and I'd say it looked 3/4 very good, which is to say, I thought 3 of the back 4 were very good. And
Are we going to reveal those names? Or
sure, because I thought I was a little concerned just based on some of the reaction I'd seen about Jorge Villafana, and I think, again, in those very emotional, very high-pressure games, you remember the kind of obvious incidents. And so I remembered Villafana dribbling out of bounds twice and taking a heavy touch once. And so that kind of stood out to me upon second viewing. He had a very, very good game.
I think he had an excellent game.
Yep. Same thing for Omar Gonzalez. I felt like the kind of like there was the one moment where he got burnt for pace. There was a couple bad passes. And so that's what stood out. Upon second review, looked very, very good. A strong defensive play, I would say. Overall, like he had like some good first touches, some good challenges, some good steps, but some good drops. So I thought he was very good. Same for Matt Beasler. I said that in the quick take that I thought he was excellent. The one who I thought was pretty bad overall was Graham Zusi.
Yes.
I thought he had a pretty bad game.
Can you say specifically why? I guess we'll talk about the goals maybe in a bit, but maybe we should talk about the defenders first, because this will be the spot to talk about them.
Sure.
Let's start with the guy we're not as excited about, Graham Zusi. What did you see that you didn't like?
First of all, like I still felt like there were a lot of like, that's good enough, right? Like sort of like moments where he would, like there was one in the very beginning of the game where he's far forward, he's doing a good job of getting into the attack, but there's like a loose ball that's bouncing and he goes to head it, and it's just very like, I'm going to win the header, I'm going to beat the guy who's next to me to win the header, and he does. But he heads it into space where no one is except for a Jamaican player who then launches a counterattack.
Yeah.
And it just feels like it's a lot of sort of like short-term decisions from Graham Zusi without a lot of thought as to what could come next.
Okay.
So there's those moments. There was that
the break you were talking about was a Graham Zusi pass back to Paul Arriola where he just overhits it and misdirects it. Puts everybody in trouble. I think so. I credited Zusi with sprinting back.
Yeah.
Again, Zusi not as fast as maybe I thought, but still not slow either. He managed to sprint back, get the other side of Darren Mattocks, then gets beat again, but then Omar Gonzalez essentially rescues him in the end.
Yeah, so there's that. There's in the 9th minute, like Jamaica get a free kick, it's a player down, they take their time getting set up. And I say all this just to say that then they hit a 60-yard free kick that goes over Zusi's head and is into space for another counterattack.
And not to be just like picking on him, but there is sort of a danger with those diagonal balls that we see. Zusi is he's usually the guy who it's possible for someone to sneak in behind him, right?
Yeah.
First of all, because he's not that great in the air. Like, even unchallenged, he's not that great in the air. And second of all, because he's not always aware of exactly the correct defensive positioning.
Yeah,
okay.
and so...
Let's not go too deep on this, though, because there's a lot of positive to talk about. I don't want to start with too much negative.
There is, and I'm with you, but I just wanted to add with, like, then the final one that really just made me be like, oh boy, was in the early 80s minute. I don't have the note in front of me. He tries to pass to Gyasi Zardes and passes straight out of bounds. And so...
He was very unhappy with that. I remember him yelling.
Yeah, he was pretty mad. And I think it was 78th minute. Now I have it in front of me. But I just feel like overall you combine that, and those are, again, moments that stand out. But there were lots of other little moments here and there that it just made me think that Graham Zusi, I don't think, is the second choice right back option for the United States going to a World Cup. I just think he has so much work to do. Maybe he improves. Maybe he does solidify that in the upcoming World Cup qualifiers. But right now, I would take probably Timmy Chandler without having seen him in a very long time.
Yeah, because if you're unfamiliar with the US team, DeAndre Yedlin is the first choice right back.
So.
And really, we're talking about what the depth chart looks like for second choice right backs. And it's Graham Zusi. It's maybe Timmy Chandler if he feels committed. That I would take him ahead of Zusi. Yeah. That's a whole debate, maybe for a future show.
I think
where we try and pick our depth chart, our 23 for the World Cup.
And to clarify, I'm specifically speaking about my opinion. I think in reality, it probably is still Graham Zusi as the number 2. And I think Bruce Arena will say, no, he did some good stuff. He did what I wanted tonight.
Can I end on an up note on Zusi? You can always trust him to sort of try and make up for his mistakes. You can trust him for hard work. You can trust him to join the attack. You can trust him to high press, put the opposition under pressure. If you're playing a pressure game, Zusi's a good guy to step up there and try and make things happen. So it's not all bad, but it definitely was not as good as the 3 other defenders.
Agreed.
So let's go. I want to talk about Omar Gonzalez because he was the guy throughout this tournament we've been really worried about. We've been feeling like he's been stepping back too much. He's been a little too reactive. And I really was worried that Jamaica would break our offside trap because Gonzalez would not be sort of holding the line. Tonight, he held the line. Not only did he hold the line, he stepped out and made plays as well.
Yeah, and that, I think, was the key point for me because in other games in this tournament, we've seen him sort of have that moment of indecision where he doesn't quite know when to step, so he backs off a little bit, or he tracks the runner coming through and therefore doesn't step to the guy with the ball. Tonight, I felt like he was kind of his aggressive self when he needed to be. So you would see him winning the goal kicks, winning the punts, winning the kind of 50-50 challenges, but also knowing when to back off and kind of keep the line, hold the line, and contain a Jamaican counterattack here and there.
There was that one moment where I think Beasler is running through with I think it's O'Neill Fisher, number 8, is making an interior run from the right wing, and Beasler's tracking him through, but then Beasler stops. Fisher even goes the other way a little bit to hold the line. Fisher runs offside, and we catch him. Yeah. Right? I think in the past you would have had also Gonzalez dropping, and that offside line would have been ruined. You saw the defence working as a unit, holding that line tonight. And it was a real relief to see it.
Yeah, and I think coming into this tournament, if you go all the way back, I know it might be hard to believe because we've criticized him a lot, but I said, I like Omar Gonzalez. I want him to be part of this team. I think he's a good defender, and I don't think he's been very good in this tournament. Tonight, I thought he was excellent. Yes. And I thought there were moments that really showed that where he reacted to things faster than anyone else on the team. Right. And he would spot, Darren Maddox is open, or this guy's open, Javon Watson is open, I'm going to step to him. And 2 or 3 times, he broke up a play that I think no one else saw coming.
There were 2 things I thought I saw him do. The first is exactly what you just described, where he would step out of the back 4 and then, meet the ball before it got to the forward, who they were trying to play off of. Or when they tried to play direct balls through, he would be the one sort of sweeping in behind and getting there first and just clearing it out of bounds. Perfectly solid defensive work. Thumbs up Omar Gonzalez. Yeah, and it's good to say that.
And even when he didn't do either one of those things, he at least made the attacker think. Yes. And it slows things down. And there was a couple different times
because he's on your back. He's on your back.
And so you'd see the first touch pop up in the air, whereas it might have been just a calm touch and turn if they didn't have that pressure. But because Omar stepped in the right moments.
Come in.
Yeah. So, but again,
I've seen the final scene of Rogue One.
I have not. So there you go.
It's peak Darth Vader.
Spoiler alert. Yeah, that's one that I've just sort of somehow slipped through. Didn't see it in the theaters. I'm not sure why.
Hot tip, it's on Netflix now.
Oh, is it really?
Yep.
Oh, I'll
it's on Netflix now.
To take care of that. Probably not tonight since it's 3:30 in the morning, but at some point. But I will say, I do still think that people are going to say, like, oh, Omar, like, he got beat on that one play really badly, and he had, like, that one clumsy. And so people will probably remember that. And I think this game as a whole, there's going to be moments that people remember that are, like, some will be very good, and they will not remember the other really good moments that the players had, because, like, Josie Altidore, I thought, worked really, really hard, and we'll talk about him. But he'll be remembered for that goal. But I think he did so much else off the ball. And I think Omar Gonzalez is another one.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, Matt Besler, I think take everything we said that Omar Gonzalez did well and, like, copy and paste to Matt Besler, but make it left-footed.
Yeah. And we talked about in the hot take that there were plays where he was just sort of like, nope, not messing around. And I think that's what you want, especially in a final, and especially in a final that I think ended up being closer than we thought it would be. When the United States went ahead 1-0, we've seen this at different points with different teams in the past, where when you concede right at the end of the first half, it completely changes the locker room at halftime. It completely changes the halftime approach. Now you're looking for the equalizer and not the go-ahead goal. And so I felt like maybe Jamaica was going to come out, press a little bit too much. The United States would get a goal. Maybe it'd end up like 2 or 3-1 or 2 or 3-0.
I felt like one goal it was done. I really thought it was over.
Yeah, and so that it ended up being closer. I think certainly wasn't the fault of Matt Besler, and I felt like he did the smart things to make sure it didn't get closer than it ended up being.
No panic at all. Okay, and then
and I want to say that one that you mentioned, sorry to interrupt, but that one you mentioned where he really makes that decision of like, I'm going to back this line, I think I'm going to hold it, and he's like tracking him and then just kind of comes inside and just adjusts his run a little bit, and that does make O'Neal Fisher go offside.
Yep.
I mean, that's a gutsy move and a gutsy decision in a high-pressure final.
And isn't that a thing we talked about in the past was when you're dealing with pace, and O'Neal Fisher is fast, right? When you're dealing with pace, you can either drop deep and try and compensate for it that way, or you can be brave and hold the offside line and catch them. And that's what the US did with O'Neal Fisher. That's what Matt Besler did. Yes, thumbs up for Matt Besler as well.
So let's finish it out then. Jorge Villafaña, left back.
Jorge Villafaña, I thought was excellent.
Agreed.
For many, many reasons. Not just defensively, but the way that every time the US attacked, Darlington Nagbe always had Jorge Villafaña overlapping on the outside of him. And it was almost like clockwork. If you saw Nagbe on the screen with the ball, you knew that streaming outside of him a second later would be Villafaña. And that didn't just make Nagbe's job easier, it maximised Nagbe's abilities. Because it opens up space by then pinning the right back, usually Alvis Powell, it would pin him back on the outside and make the other centre-back, I think Damien Lowe was on that side. It made them terrified of that ball left to the overlap. Let Nagbe turn inside and play the ball inside many times into space, or Villafaña would actually receive the ball and charge down the line and get a couple of crosses in.
Yeah. I mean, and some of those crosses were good, and some of those crosses were not so great. And I think that's probably what you're going to get from Jorge Villafaña. I think he is a solid defender who will do everything he can to help out on offense. I don't think he's necessarily always going to be as productive when it comes to delivering
it's not always
those balls
going to be
into the
pretty
box.
and smooth, right?
No, but I think he's going to work, and I think the other thing he's going to do is spot opportunities. And we saw him do that a number of different times in this game, was sort of see where everybody else was, realize that, oh, they are 30 yards ahead of me if I get into that channel, and that's what he would do. And suddenly you'd see Michael Bradley get the ball in the middle, have no options through the center, but have Jorge Villafaña out wide. He'd ping it there. Nagbe would check 2. Bradley would come inside, and you'd have that triangle that we talked about in the preview. And they could really exploit some like 3v2 mismatches, 4v3 mismatches against Jamaica.
And here's the other weird thing is, I think people may not realize how important fullbacks are to the pace of your passing tempo. Because so often if there's pressure on central defenders or central midfielders, the outlet pass is often to the fullback, because they're sort of the least marked and the least pressure, so they're the outlet ball, right? So or with a goalkeeper, right? Often they'll throw to the fullbacks because they're open, they're more open. So how quickly that fullback then moves the ball forward is really key to how quickly your team plays. And I love every time Villafaña got the ball, he would be looking down the line to force it down the line to Nagbe, and he would get it to his feet. You know what I mean? So it really ups the tempo of play for Villafaña to be doing all that good stuff.
So thumbs up for Villafaña.
Yeah, and all this leads us into talking about the first goal.
Sure.
So it was a Josie Altidore free kick, but the way that we win that free kick is Michael Bradley getting fouled at the top of the box. That ball comes from Darlington Nagbe on the left, because he's got Villafaña on the outside of him, sort of double teaming that right side of Jamaica to open up space for Nagbe to cut inside.
Yes. It also comes about, and this is like a quick aside, if you want to go even further back, like a minute or two, it comes about from the really high intensity, high press that the United States did, at least in that first half. And that was, again, what what you and I talked about in the preview. It's something we really wanted to see was the United States going at Jamaica, making them uncomfortable, not letting them just kind of bunker, and the United States would slowly possess. And you saw that from the second minute, Kellen Acosta, like really direct pressure leading to Jamaica conceding possession.
Yep.
Same thing in this sequence. It was basically, 3 or 4 different players, Altidore, Zusi, Omar, and Michael Bradley, all kind of swarming, stepping.
Down that right side, right? The US's right side. I think Jamaica got the ball back, and all those guys were on them immediately, forced a bad pass.
And it basically forced them to kick it long from the United States, build down the left channel, play it inside. Bradley's fouled, free kick. Josie does things.
Josie certainly does do things. Can we give Bradley some credit, though? Because I think you spotted this, that when he gets fouled, it's like he's faked to shoot, kind of, and he's drawn Romario Williams, of all people, centre forward. We always said he's a very hard worker. He will come and make it hard for you. I think he tried a little too hard to tackle Michael Bradley.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And it's plays like that made him the Golden Ball winner.
Oh, yes. Michael Bradley, Golden Ball winner after what? Quarter, semi-final? 3 games. Played half the tournament, wins the Golden Ball.
That's all it takes.
And it's hard to argue he doesn't deserve it.
Yeah, I think so. I think, and like similarly in the pregame show, Alexi Lalas said that Andre Blake was like far and away the best player in this tournament. And then I think he added so far. And I was initially like, no, okay, that makes sense. And it's another one of those where it's like, well, yeah, I guess like if you look at the way these games went and the way the United States form turned around once Bradley came into camp as well as other players, I think there's a solid argument to be made for Michael Bradley winning the Golden Ball.
Okay, so setting up this free kick that Josie Altidore puts top left corner.
Yeah.
And I want to say I called it in studio, but it was more like an optimistic, go on, Josie, put it top left corner. It wasn't a prediction. There will be the argument that he may not have scored that if Andre Blake was in goal.
Right.
Because at this point, Andre Blake has subbed out with, I'm not sure what the injury is to his hand, but it was bad enough that I watched you from across the table
it's not good.
watching something on Reddit of a close-up of it, and the look on your face made me not want to rewatch it.
Yeah, I mean, I was shocked when they said that I think he had 2 x-rays or 2 scans, nothing broken, or 2 x-rays that were all clear, which maybe means he just has no bones anymore. His hands are just clear. But I think
jellyfish?
Then what that would mean is, based on that footage that you were just talking about, I would guess like some sort of like severe dislocation with also a severe laceration, because you can see...
Laceration? That means cut, right?
Oh, yeah. He was bleeding, and it was a big old cut in there. So I'm guessing it was sort of like maybe a knuckle knocked around in a way that it wasn't supposed to be, probably a sprain and a pretty big cut. So
is there an element that the US are kind of lucky that Blake had to go out? It comes from, my memory says, an Altidore long-distance shot, and then Acosta comes in for the follow-up after Blake's save and catches him on the hand, right?
Yes.
So do we credit Acosta with kind of taking Blake out of the game?
I am not, because that's going to get you bad karma. I'll credit Josie Altidore with spotting an opportunity, and he sort of like fakes to the left, makes 2 Jamaican defenders step that way, and then cuts right back, and then has that rocket from about 25 yards out. Which, in retrospect, we should have not been. In retrospect, we shouldn't have been surprised that he then hit a free kick from there because he just hit that shot.
That's true. I remember being frustrated at the time because I remember in the preview saying if we resort to long shots like Mexico did, I remember Gutierrez, number 8 for Mexico, having some horrible long shots. Then maybe that means we're struggling. But you persuaded me on the rewatch that actually this is Altidore making some space and actually taking a very good shot that was going top corner, if not for the outstretched arm of Andre Blake.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great shot and it's a great save. I think the difference would be that in that Mexico game, it sort of devolved into a lot of players being like, well, no one else is going to do it, so I'll do it. So I'll dribble 4 people, cut inside, shoot when I shouldn't shoot. And it just felt like everybody was sort of trying to take the game by the scruff of the neck, which can be good or it can be bad if everyone's trying to do it and thus making or forcing low percentage shots. Altidore in this situation, I think it was a moment of trickery because the United States hadn't been shooting. We heard, I think around halftime, that Bruce Arena wanted them to shoot more, wanted them to take their chances whenever they presented themselves. I think this was a good example, especially because it leads to a corner that leads to, or free kick, excuse me, that ended up leading to a corner, but it also led to Andre Blake leaving,
which
but
really
then he hit his free kick.
Right? Last word on Andre Blake before we move to the replacement goalkeeper and what happens with the Josie Altidore free kick. All right, Andre Blake, damaged hand, golden glove, Andre Lannister. Like Jamie Lannister?
I get it. I get it.
I get it. I'm just not laughing.
Yeah, pretty much.
Fine. You and Will Parchman can do the show yourself next week.
Significantly different golden gloves there, but yeah.
Okay, so the replacement is Dwayne Miller. So by the time Josie Altidore steps up to take this free kick, it's right at the end of the first half. The replacement in goal is Dwayne Miller. And we, on the replay, we spotted many, many things. Well, we spotted a couple of things that we think Dwayne Miller got wrong? And it's not just that he's not Andre Blake, but it may also be that.
It may also be that. For starters, I think the key thing that I'll go with what I noticed, which is that I think his footwork was a little sloppy.
Yeah.
Because what I noticed, and it took us a while because I couldn't quite figure out what was wrong with it, is that
not to denigrate Josie Altidor's free kick. Right? It's an amazing free kick, but there's also some error from the goalkeeper. Yeah.
And I think part of it is, like, if you watch, when we watched it live, something just seemed weird, and in rewatching it, I think it's essentially that he doesn't get like the thrust or the launch that you would expect because he goes with that plant foot.
Yeah,
and
if it was a rocket launch, it would have been a failed rocket launch.
Yeah, basically, it would have come right back down because
Yeah.
like he doesn't get that clearance, he doesn't get that height that you expect him to get, and I think it's because when he tries to move laterally from side to side, he doesn't kind of keep his feet in line. He crosses his left foot in front of his right foot, and you can see him. He doesn't really stumble, but you can just tell that it's not quite as clean as it should be. And it's a little more scrambly, and so he just kind of then puts himself. He has to react to that because now his left foot is a little bit close to his right foot, so he has to swing the right foot further back and around, and so it ends up being almost like a kind of a stumbly jump versus like a solid plant and launch.
And if you've ever played for a decent standard soccer team and done some practice, one of the things when you're losing, right? One of the things you'll do is do just the side-to-side move, which is like you bring your left foot in towards your right foot, but you don't touch.
Key
and you
point.
go out with your right foot, don't touch the feet.
And
you can move left and right and don't cross your feet over. Dwayne Miller crosses his feet over, and that causes him to lose momentum and slightly lose balance because I think he drags his right foot back.
Yep.
The other thing I think I noticed is I think he was a little too far off his line, which theoretically closes down the angle, right? Which is why goalkeepers aren't allowed to come off the line for penalty kicks because it gives you an advantage. But when you're reacting to something from a distance that's going right in the top corner, being closer to the ball slows your reaction time. You have less time to think and react.
Yeah, and so if you watch this goal, I mean, he gets a hand to it. He pushes it onto the top of the bar, the top netting, and you do wonder if he's 5 feet back on that line and therefore has that extra quarter second, half second, whatever it may be. Does he get a hand to that more cleanly? Does he parry it out or put it over the bar? And I think there's a decent chance he does. And that's why we say, just based on those two little things, that seems like some technical work combined with some awareness that Andre Blake has demonstrated time and time again in this tournament. That's why we say maybe if Andre Blake is in there, maybe that gets saved.
Yeah, okay, but in the real world, it doesn't.
Yeah, it does
goes
not.
top corner.
No, it does not. And a big part of that is just because it is so well hit. It's Josie Altidor gets the power behind it, but the bend, and it's also kind of disguised because it's up and down the way it is.
Yeah.
It's just a really well hit free kick. And I love, it's one of those where you can see he hits it and he sort of immediately starts to celebrate. Michael Bradley is already raising, like, as soon as it gets, like, even with the wall, Michael Bradley knows that's going in the back of the net.
Did you enjoy, as I did, the Josie Kellyn Acosta conversation that seemed to happen about who was taking that free kick? And there was never any doubt in anyone's mind, except maybe Kellyn Acosta's, that Josie Altidor was taking that free kick.
And I love that afterwards, Stephen Goff of the Washington Post spoke with
Soccer
Josie
Insider.
Altidor and asked him about like what that conversation was. And Altidor summarized it as basically he said like, seniority, man.
And even more so
I think I might have explained that around. I think it might have been seniority, man, seniority. But either way, you get the point.
And I think you said at the top of the show that Josie Altidor, the Gold Cup final, he'll be remembered for this free kick, and maybe quite rightly, because this will definitely make the highlight reel, of maybe the whole Gold Cup. But the reason you're more excited is all the other things he did.
Yes. I mean, yeah. So obviously,
Talk us through it.
I mean, obviously, like,
I like how you took a moment to breathe it in and think about it.
Well, just because I don't want to like just go off on a list and sort of like when you just start listing stuff, it sort of loses the importance. So I'll just focus on a couple different sequences. There was one when he basically like receives the ball under pressure with his back to goal, and I think. First off, there were times in the past where we would have seen Josie just kind of put his foot on the ball and try to body off the defender. Sometimes give away a foul because he gets too aggressive, and then sometimes it just slows things down. He can get the ball poked away, or he ends up dropping it. This time, he kind of took a touch away, still bodied the defender, then cut to his right. And I think he had Clint Dempsey running through.
Yeah, but it wasn't quite right.
No,
right? And he recognised it wasn't quite right.
And I think in the past he would have recognized it and still tried to force it through because it's Clint Dempsey, because he's like, oh, he's there. And we both have had those moments where you spot the guy, he's screaming for the ball, and Clint Dempsey has that personality of sort of like, I want to get him the ball because I'm probably going to hear about it if I don't. But Altidore in this situation cuts it back and plays just a smart, like, it's not even just like an easy ball. He still plays it laterally, but it's into like an on-rushing Michael Bradley, so he can take it in stride, like with momentum behind him.
Yeah.
And it was just that sort of like, doesn't just hold it up, doesn't just put on the foot on the ball, doesn't force a pass, doesn't do something stupid and get a free kick. Just a series of really smart decisions from Josie, and that's the sort of veteran thing that I think we saw from him in all three of these games.
The other thing I think is worth talking about is something that Matt Doyle pointed out on MLSsoccer.com, which is that one of Jamaica's tactics, with the way they sort of sat deep, was to have, who's number 4? Is it Richie? Number 4, Richie, was sort of one of the central midfielders, but would sit a lot deeper than Javon Watson, right? So he would be in front of the back four, providing a shield, which makes it hard for two forwards to receive the ball if he's in front of them, blocking it all off, right? But Josie's the guy that figured that out, figured out how to deal with it, which is to come deeper than Richie and make sure he can get his touches there and make things happen before Richie can provide the shield.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
So Josie Altidore now is so senior that he is figuring things out. And I almost want to say, we mentioned Klinsmann in the quick take, hot take. I don't want to go down this road too much, but he was always big into sort of not giving players any instructions and just go out there and figure it out.
Yeah.
But I would argue the way Bruce Arena does it, which gives players specific instructions, then within that construct, guys like Josie have the confidence to step up and solve problems.
Yeah, I think that's a key distinction there as well, because especially against a bunker team like Jamaica, when it's 1-1, clearly they're trying to play for extra time, maybe penalties. And I think when that happens, it's easy to just sort of be like desperation time, and we're going to lump crosses into the box, and we're just going to kind of hang on the last defender and put we've seen that so many times from so many teams. The forward just like puts his hand in the air and just screams to the ball over and over again. And again, I think in years past that would have been Altidore. It would have been we can't really find our way through, put the ball wide, cross the ball in, and that's how we'll try to get a goal. I don't think that would have worked. I know Landon Donovan wanted to see more crossing. I really don't think that would have been as effective as what you just mentioned. Instead of just like lumping the ball into the box, it was dropping in, trying to make those triangles, try to get those passing combinations and move the ball from left to right and back and forth so that you pull Jamaican players out, then you get some opportunities.
Even when we get to talk about the winning goal, the Jordan Morris winning goal, there is a moment of Josie Altidore coming off the back line, coming deep to receive a pass from Nagbe that kind of starts the whole move that leads to the goal. Okay,
it does.
Before we talk about Jamaica's equaliser, because unfortunately we're going to have to go there, we're going to have to talk about that. We have a sponsor on today's show, Taylor.
That we do, my friend.
It is a new sponsor. Today's new sponsor is RX Bar.
RX Bar is a whole food protein bar, which means they're made with 100% whole ingredients.
They label the core ingredients, egg whites, dates, and nuts, on the front of the packaging, and the ingredients that make up the texture and taste on the back. No fillers, additives, chemicals, or added sugar.
And to clarify, that means that basically it's like the egg whites, the dates, and the nuts are the primary thing that holds it all together, and then they add all the other stuff to give it the flavor. They come in 11 different flavors, and they're all gluten-free, soy-free, and dairy-free.
And when you use only real food ingredients, it turns out you can taste real food, like berries, cacao, and sea salt, and cocoa. And Taylor, I got to ask you a question.
Okay.
Do you know the difference between cacao and cocoa?
I think, is cacao like the pure chocolate?
Yes.
Okay.
So what's cocoa?
Not the pure chocolate?
It's basically the same thing, but it's been heated to a powder.
Which one? Okay, cocoa.
Yeah, so cacao is almost like it's just been chopped off the tree and it's ready to go.
Gotcha.
And cocoa is when it's been heated to powder form. But when you buy it in the store, if you buy one of the branded ones, it's also going to have a lot of sugar and milk and stuff added.
Yep.
In the RX bars, it's pure cacao and pure cocoa. So, whether you like sweet or savoury, chocolate or fruit, there's an RX bar for you.
They're great for breakfast, on the go. They're good for snacks at the office, pre- and post-workout foods, or just to eat when you're laying around the house. And that's what I have found, because I'm trying to not be so much I've been working all day, I'll just stop and have some food, which means a bowl of pasta and some chips. Not the most healthy. But this, kind of all natural, keeps you going, gives you the good fuel, without, making you feel kind of bloated and gross, which is what happens when I eat, say, a Snickers bar for energy.
Okay, so for me, when we got...
I might have just killed any future of a Snickers sponsorship. I apologize for that.
That's fine, because I don't eat those. When I eat an RX bar in the office, I check the nutritional information on the back. That's because as...
You can hear the crinkles, that's what he's doing.
As I've mentioned in the past, I've got type 1 diabetes, which is now cool because Jordan Morris also has it, so he's made it cool again. And I also love to know sort of what the carbohydrate levels are in each thing I eat. RX Bar has nice low carbohydrate levels, 20 grams total, 10 grams sugar. Those are good numbers to work with.
So those are the good numbers? I don't know these things.
Well, the lower the better in many ways.
Gotcha.
Right.
So with all that said, if listeners want to get their hands or mouths on some RX bars, how can they do so?
You have to do first hands, then mouths. That's how it works. You can go to rxbar.com/soccer, and if you enter promo code soccer at checkout, you'll get 25% off your first order.
There you go.
rxbar.com/soccer and enter promo code soccer at checkout, 25% off. Thank you to RX Bar for sponsoring today's episode.
And apologies to RX Bar that this advertisement is immediately followed by talking about Jamaica's equalizer.
Okay, so it's early-ish in the second half, right? It's not quite from second half kickoff, but it's close enough that it deflates our bubble.
A little bit.
Yeah, and reinflates Jamaica's confidence.
Yeah, it was so sort of against the run of play, at least in my mind, from the entire first half and then the beginning of the second half, that it almost felt like, wait, what now? What's happening?
Yeah,
that's not allowed.
Like I said, I really thought, especially when we did the preview, Jamaica will sit back and the US will have to try and break them down. And I really thought when the US scores, this thing's over.
Yeah.
Right? We're good. We're going to coast the rest of the way. I don't even think Jamaica did anything too special in the second half, except win a corner.
Well, except maybe Kellen Acosta was like, oh, we're up 1-0.
Yeah.
Like, we got this. No worries.
Oh, I don't want to talk about this, but I guess we have to talk about this. This whole move starts with a very bad Kellen Acosta giveaway in his own defensive third, right? He essentially tries to play a pass to Michael Bradley, but doesn't turn his entire body in the correct direction, and so ends up playing it directly back to Jamaica. Is that fair?
It is, and I'll add this. So we didn't catch that on the first view, and we didn't talk about it in the Quick Take Hot Take. We did read Matt Doyle's review of the game, and he mentioned it there. So we then, when we were rewatching the game, like from the start of the second half, anytime Kellen Acosta was on the ball, we were like, is this it? This is it, isn't it? It was terrible.
And to be fair, he completes like 5 of 5 passes, and they're all incredible passes. Well, not all incredible passes. They're all very good passes. He's either like playing short passes through midfield, or he's spreading the play out wide. And we're thinking, wait, has Matt Doyle got it wrong? This is a really good set of passing from Kellen Acosta.
That's the thing. Did you ever see Carlito's Way?
Yes.
So Carlito's Way like begins with the end, and so you know how it's going to end, and then it shows you the whole movie. And so the whole movie, you're like, how's it going to happen? How's it going to happen? Well, he's going to get, this is all good, and then it happens. That's how this felt. Where it's sort of like, I know it's going to go bad. I know it's going to go bad. Can we just get to the part where it goes bad? And then we did, and it was pretty bad.
So I said, his body's facing the wrong way. Yeah. Could you add any detail to that? Because I think that's going to sound strange to people.
I mean, I think it's basically him trying to do what Matt Beasler didn't do. Essentially, instead of just kind of booting the ball clear, putting it into touch, conceding a throw-in, or conceding possession back with like Jamaica's center backs, he tries to be a little bit crafty, and it's essentially he's running, if you can imagine, like towards his own like left side corner flag. So he's like facing away from play, running diagonally left, and then he tries to like play it with his right foot back, we think, into the middle of the field for Michael Bradley.
Yeah.
So it's basically like momentum going the wrong way. It's the equivalent of like a quarterback running the wrong way and then like throwing off of his back foot back across to him. It's just always going to be like, that's never going to be good. And this is not very good.
And in a very basic soccer way, like if you get some like youth soccer coaching or any soccer coaching, they'll tell you that your plant foot, the direction that's facing is the direction the ball's going, right? And when you sort of advance a bit, you can kind of like, if you know the rules, you can break the rules, right? So you can have your plant foot facing one way, but then sneakily pass the ball the other way. And that's what Acosta's trying to do, but he kind of doesn't get it right, and so he ends up kind of not getting it even remotely in Bradley's direction.
No, instead he gives it straight to a Jamaican player. And then that leads to a corner, and then that leads to a goal.
It certainly does. And I think the guy that it's Javon Watson scores at the back post, marked by Jordan Morris. Jordan Morris got sort of all of the blame at the time. All of the blame on the replays, but we rewatched it. We rewatched this very closely, and Jordan Morris gets all of the blame.
I mean, you could give a little bit to Acosta for the sequence that we just mentioned, but
the actual marking on the corner is all Morris's fault.
Yeah, it is. I mean, he's marked up with Watson, and I think he's so focused on not losing his man that it's that weird thing where you lose your man, because then you're sort of like, have they crossed it yet? I need to focus on him. Okay, he's here. Where's everybody else from relation? Has the ball come in? And you're so trying to focus on everything that you can't really focus on anything 100%. And so he's trying to do the sort of like touch marking, where as long as I know where he is by touch, then I've got him, which is true, except that like just touching him doesn't do it. And if he then is making a run towards goal as you're touching him, but you're like, I still got him though, still touching him, doesn't quite work that way.
He's goal side of me and kicking the ball into the back of the net, but I still got him.
Oops. Yeah. And so in this sequence, it's basically Watson runs behind Jordan Morris, but Morris still has the hand on him, but I think realizes too late, like, oh no, he's gone behind me. And then I think also kind of steps away from goal at first, so then he sent
he
his
steps the wrong way
momentum
because he doesn't know where Watson is.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
Why. He's stepping to where he thinks Watson is,
Yeah.
then he tries to get back the other side.
And I think you spotted a very interesting thing about the way he positioned himself in defending this corner
so
as well.
So if you freeze frame this as everybody is marked up, right? The reason that's the more experienced defenders like Gonzalez, like Beasler, like Villafana, even Josie Altidore, who I don't think is the best set-piece defender, but is doing the right thing here, they're marked up in a way where you're kind of like at a diagonal angle so that you are goal side of your man, but you can also see your man and you can see the corner flag and the ball about to come in at the same time. So you don't have to be like an owl and keep looking left and right. You can just have one field of vision that encompasses both the man you're marking and the ball that's about to come in, right? But if you look at Jordan Morris, instead, he is sort of facing parallel to his man.
Yeah,
he's
facing Watson and then he's trying to look back to see if the ball's
so then he has to go left, look at the corner kick, right, look at my man, left, look at... And he keeps going back. You see him, I can't even tell you how many times. Left, right, left, right, left, right. And then on one of the moments when he's looking at the ball, at the corner kick, ready to come in... I don't know if Javon Watson times this, knows, you know, in a video game where you notice what the rhythm is and you have to jump through it. I'm thinking of a Super Mario game.
I'm going to say he does not do this before you get to this point, but sure, okay. I'm with you.
But I think Javon Watson waits until Morris is looking at the corner flag and then runs in behind him, starts his run. And it all happens very quickly, right? It's all in 1 second. But that's enough to get the other side of him and get to the ball first.
Yeah, and I think in the commentary, I think Stu Holden said, Jordan Morris switches off for half second and that's all it takes. I don't think he switched off. I think he was overly switched on. That he was so focused on doing so many things that he just wasn't able to really focus on the actual threat.
But to me, it is that original defensive positioning.
Yeah.
And I think part of this is Jordan Morris is 22.
Yep.
He's been an attacker his whole life. Defending set pieces is low down the list of priorities. And we've watched Jordan Morris improve as a player over the last 2, maybe 3 years, because we even saw him play for the US when he was a Stanford player, right? So we've watched Jordan Morris improve in various aspects of his game, but now you start seeing these little things where he's not very good at this basic defensive positioning on set pieces, because it's not something he's been asked to do very much. But when you get to this level, you have to do it. And you're going to get found out if you don't do it correctly. And I will say, the only other guy doing a similar thing to what Morris is doing is Kellyn Acosta, another 22-year-old.
Yep.
So it's definitely a young man's game to sort of not quite have proper defensive positioning on a corner kick.
Yeah, and so if we want to talk about those two, Jordan Morris goes on to score the winner, so that's good. Kellyn Acosta goes on to be subbed out fairly early on in this game. 54th minute, about 4 minutes after the goal happens, Kellyn Acosta comes off, Clint Dempsey comes on.
So, okay, we talked about this in the Quick Take Hot Take as we love that Arena was very positive, made a very positive change, brought out a number 8 Acosta for a number 10, and essentially was, we're going to win this game in 90, we're going to get more attacking players on the field. And I just thought of it as a positive move to get Dempsey on the field. Now that we know that it was the Acosta giveaway, and then Acosta also gives the ball away again a minute later.
And there's a key thing on a yellow card, which I think is very, very important. I think for how physical and how intense the United States was being, I think that referee was sort of starting to dish the cards out a little bit, starting to be a little bit more aware. And there's a chance that with Acosta doing as much as he was being asked to do, that he could easily pick up a second yellow, and then the United States is in a lot of trouble.
But do we think that the Dempsey Acosta sub is somewhat punitive for Acosta? I mean, not punitive, but it's you're not cutting it, let's get someone else in, and someone else is Dempsey.
I do, and I think that because we've seen in other games in this tournament, Arena very audibly coaching Kellyn Acosta.
Yeah.
And I think...
What was he saying to him? It was mostly make sure to be in a space to receive the ball, demand the ball?
When? In the...
When we've heard Arena talking to Acosta.
No, it was about tracking his runs. It was about,
really?
Remember he was saying drop, that's your man, and he kept... Or no, it was Kellyn Rowe.
It was Kellyn.
Yeah, it was Acosta,
Different amount of L's.
I think Acosta, it was more about where he needed to be to link up play and to help combinations through the middle. And I think, so with that said, I think it was a bit of a punishment for him. And maybe not even punishment. Maybe it's just sort of it's not his night. He's on a yellow card. He's made some mistakes. We're going to put somebody in there. And we also want to be far more attacking, and Clint Dempsey allows them to do that.
Yeah, and he did somewhat change the game, I think. Because for the next 30 minutes, 35 minutes, I think Dempsey is more involved than Acosta was in those sort of attacking triangles, which is not... that's not to be down on Kellyn Acosta, because Dempsey's always going to be more of an attacking threat than Kellyn Acosta, because it's what he does.
Yeah, but I think the other key component there is that with Dempsey coming in, Acosta going out, you then move Jordan Morris to the wing, you move Jonathan Nagbe inside. And I think for what the United States was trying to do, which is score a goal, I think Jonathan Nagbe, if you're going with a much more attacking mindset, is going to allow you to do that. And we saw that as soon as he moved central. I mean, he was fine on the wing, but when he moved central, it's exactly what you expect. It's kind of neat passing, neat control. He doesn't really lose the ball. He never seems to panic. He draws fouls. He links up play. And I think that was another aspect of why the United States started to get more chances and eventually got that chance.
You kind of saw the trade-off, right? With Bradley and Nagbe in central midfield, the ball moved a little bit quicker than it did with Acosta, which kind of means that Nagbe is the better player in terms of making the ball move quickly, but I think that's true of most US players with Nagbe. But you also saw Nagbe lose some physical challenges. I think as soon as he goes in central midfield, Jamaica immediately win 2 headers that Acosta maybe would have won.
Over Nagbe,
Right, yeah. And this just got me thinking that it's constantly a trade-off with the US, right? You can have the strength of Acosta but not the passing, or you can have the passing of Nagbe but not the strength. And then it's very much about picking who's right for this moment. And I want to say Bruce Arena got it right in this moment.
Yeah, I think he absolutely did. And I'll add though that I think this is sort of Kellen Acosta basically being welcome to the big leagues, kid.
Yes.
It is sort of he's got to do this, he's got to do that, he's got to know how to move here when this guy's moving there. And it's just so many variables that he could do it right 90% of the time, but that 10%, if he gets something wrong, it's going to be really obvious because he's the man in the middle who's made that mistake. Again, with the football analogy, it's like if you're a place kicker. If you hit 6 of 7 field goals in a game, that's great, but people are going to remember that one that you didn't make because you are central there. You're the main person when you're kicking that ball. And so I feel like for Acosta, some of those mistakes are going to be very obvious, and I'm sure he'll improve the more experience he has, the faster he gets at kind of reading the game and learning what Arena wants. But I think it's no surprise that when you have a more veteran team in there with Clint Dempsey now involved in the attack, you get more chances and you eventually get the winner.
All right, so the winner involves Gyasi Zardes.
It does.
Okay, before we talk about Gyasi Zardes, let's talk about the man he replaced.
Sure.
Because eventually, Zardes, maybe 75th, 77th minute, replaces Paul Arriola.
He does.
Who I think has come in for a lot of criticism for his performance against Costa Rica, which I thought was actually very good, and will maybe come in for criticism for his performance against Jamaica in the final, because I think people remember a lot of crosses that didn't find their mark.
Yep, and a few sloppy touches as well, where people would have liked to see him control the ball a bit better, ironically.
But when we rewatched, I thought Paul Arriola was explosive and was so hardworking in terms of putting pressure on Jamaican defenders, but also going back the other way and doing some defensive work. And I did see some poor final balls, or poor final balls that didn't quite make it, but everything else was perfect.
And I don't think I'm just letting him off the hook here, but I'll also say that since they weren't trying to cross the ball, it seems like the United States was intentionally not just trying to hoof the ball into the box. I think that's also why you saw some bad deliveries from Arriola, because he's just trying to play them low and driven across the box. It's always going to be a little bit difficult.
Like early Pulisic. Remember we used to talk about Pulisic at Dortmund was always just trying to play that ball across the box when maybe it wasn't the correct option, but maybe he's been told to do that. Yeah, that's what I saw from Arriola.
And so we've talked about that, but it's then we're talking about what he actually did right, which was a lot of things, because I think he was really the player that I saw most often putting on that high pressure. And that meant chasing down one player, he passes, chasing down that guy, he passes, chasing down the next guy, who passes out of bounds or kicks it long. I saw Paul Arriola force 2 or 3 different occasions force 3 players into rushed passes that then led to turnovers, just by himself.
Yeah, and normally that would sound like he's being having the ball passed around him and he's chasing it, but he's actually forcing the Jamaican players to make a decision, and a less good decision they would like every time until he wins the ball back or forces it out of bounds.
Yeah, and we talked about this in the Costa Rica game, and it was true tonight as well. I think part of the reason why there were times when Zusi looked really stable, and it was because I think he had Arriola helping him. And you'd see Arriola leave his man and go drop back another 10 or 15 yards to double team Graham Zusi in a 1v1 situation. Now that makes sense because we talked about how a lot of the Jamaican players, especially Darren Maddox, can school you in a 1v1 situation. So it makes sense for Arriola to drop, but it just, again, I wasn't surprised to see him doing that extra 10 or 15 yard sprint to make sure that he had some ground covered.
Actually, that was in my notes, 2 things about Arriola and Villafana. Arriola, I think, always makes the right back behind him look better, and Villafana, the left back, always makes the left winger ahead of him look better. And I think that's 2 things I've really learned about those 2 guys over the course of this tournament.
Yes, I agree with that. I also think coming out of this tournament that we're going to see a gradual, maybe rapid evolution in terms of how good we think Paul Arriola is, because he does all this work, and I think he has a decently high IQ when it comes to figuring things out and executing a game plan.
Often finding space down the right wing.
but little moments where it was like, ooh, he's got some skills in his bag. So there was like one where he gets the ball and he does like a little bit of like an outside of the foot flick chip almost that he plays it around the player.
With a lot of backspin on it, right?
Yeah. And there's another one when the United States are defending a corner. I think Howard gets it and boots it long, or maybe it's just cleared. And Arriola like settles it with his back to goal and turns in the same motion and is almost through on goal.
He did a similar thing against Costa Rica, I think on the left wing. Well, yeah, he'll take a ball out of the air where most very like top level players would settle for just bringing it down and like trapping it is impressive. He'll take it and sort of keep the momentum that the ball had when it was fired at him and put it in front of him and take off at pace. That's a standing start kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah. And
that is a special skill. That like you do that once in a World Cup and suddenly you are known around the world.
Yeah. See? So that could be where we go with this. But the final thing that I really enjoyed about Paulo Arriola's game was a little bit self-serving in that, again, watching the game the second time, it's always interesting to see the things that you missed. And one of those was like, at the time, I wasn't surprised that Arriola eventually gets subbed out in favor of Gyasi Zardes, as you said. But watching it again, there's one moment where it was like, oh yeah, okay, he's definitely coming out. And it was when the United States have a corner, and it ends up being probably the best chance Jamaica had in the second half. They get a counterattack. They shoot it. It's like the chaos, the indecision, and Zusi eventually puts it out for a corner kick for Jamaica. Yes. And Arriola tries to cover.
Nearly scores an own goal, right?
Zusi does, yeah. But Arriola tries to make up that ground, like really tries to get back, and you see him really bust it for like 30 yards, and then you can just see him be like, I got nothing left, man. And then he slows down. And one man who does not, I'll say, is Michael Bradley, who took the corner and covers the entire length of the field to be involved in that defensive effort at the end. It's pretty impressive.
He ends up at the near post.
He sure does.
Yeah.
So, just saying. Effort there, but I enjoy that it was sort of like, oh yeah, Paulo Arriola definitely needed to be substituted because he was like, you could just see like his like fitness bar was at like the flashing red mark.
But that's not a criticism, right? That's because he's run himself so very, very hard.
I would venture to guess that he covered the most ground of any U.S. player.
And a reminder, he's only 20. He's another one that's only 22. So when you think about this team that started a Gold Cup final, 3 22-year-olds, all bad. Very, very useful.
That'll work. Yeah,
that will work.
So
Gyasi
Zardes comes on.
Okay, so I think everybody knows Gyasi Zardes will not get credited with the assist when he crosses the ball in. Jermaine Taylor heads it down.
I don't know. Some people did. Some people were like, "Oh, there it is!" Like typical Gyasi Zardes. I'm slating him and saying he's having a bad game, and then he gets the assist on the goal. And it was like, "What? No. No.
Well, I kind of want to call this. Like there's an MLS assist, which is where you get the assist. Well, hear me out. When you get the pass before the pass is an MLS assist or a hockey assist. I want to crown a thing or invent a thing called a CONCACAF assist, which is where you do something that you kind of get wrong, but then through a bit of good fortune, your team scores from it.
There's no kind of in there. It was wrong.
Yeah, it's a CONCACAF assist.
I mean, you can call it that if you so choose. I find myself frustrated by this because it was kind of what Zardes did from the moment he came on the field. I think his first touch was like dribbling. It was leaving the ball behind. The first thing he did, checking my notes, was he got the ball and then he didn't take a heavy enough touch, strangely, and then he had to like adjust his run and slow things down.
Yeah, as I told you at the time, like Indiana Jones in his hat, he went back for it. Fine, he got it.
Yeah. You can keep making these adorable arguments. The reality is that, and let me, I guess, be the bad guy here, is that, I mean, he had a bad game. Like, I thought this was one of the games where all of the criticisms that people have of Gyasi Zardes came to the forefront. Yeah. It was heavy touches, but then not heavy enough touches. It was even in the moments where he did have good like sequences, it began with him getting a first touch and the ball popped up in the air and he had to take a second touch to get it under control. And against a better opponent who are going to be on you right away, you don't have that time. And so it was frustrating for me because I felt like he has had a better tournament, and it's a shame that it's ending, in my mind at least, with a sort of down performance. And that cross as well, like, yes, it ends up leading to a goal, but it leads to a goal because a Jamaican defender, Jermaine Taylor, makes a bad play.
Yeah.
If he just puts that back out for a corner kick, or if he puts it out for a throw-in, it's just a terrible cross from Gyasi Zardes aimed for no one.
He played it sort of top of the 6-yard box, and maybe Morris or Dempsey, he was hoping we're going to run onto it, but I don't think he played it deep enough for them to be able to connect with it.
Yeah.
Fair?
Yeah, and I think
maybe he thinks Jordan Morris is faster than he is.
I mean, that could be, and he probably is. But then it was just like, it's not even those moments, but also like little things like where he like dribbled inside and then like visibly like got frustrated with people for not moving.
Yeah, I remember that.
But it came about because he had like tried to do something and it didn't work, and everybody had already run in for the cross, and then they had to recycle their runs, and they were mid recycle when he looked to pass.
Okay, let's think of it this way though. Jesse Zardes, the one thing he definitely gives you, and the reason I kind of like him, is a really like honest effort, right? And I think maybe the fact that he came in for Areola might tell you something about the pecking order, which is maybe Bruce Arena has an idea of. I want a certain hardworking guy who's never going to let me down in terms of tracking back. He's always going to hassle people, challenge people, maybe can't put in the best cross. Areola started this game, Zardes came in. Like, is that maybe a little window into how the 23 might look or how the World Cup pecking order might go?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think even with all of my frustrations from this game, I mean, I still think Jesse Zardes is very much in Bruce Arena's plans, if not already on that list.
You'd never fault his effort, right?
No, I wouldn't. And so, again, I'm not going to just judge him by this one game, therefore he's terrible. I just thought, given what we've seen from him in this tournament and how I think he has looked better, and I think he's looked better than a lot of the criticism thrown his way. Yeah. Tonight, I thought he really didn't bring it.
Yeah, this was his worst performance. Yeah. Right. And yet, he puts that not very good cross in. Jermaine Taylor, basically, I don't know if he makes a bad decision or if he makes a bad connection trying to head it clear.
Yes.
Now I've said it like that.
It is both. I think it's like he's
Jermaine Taylor is the Jamaica centre back, by the way, 21.
Yeah, and I'm going to say,
not for you. I know you know.
Thank you. But I'm going to say, to our credit, I'm going to credit both of us here. This is something that we thought was a weakness for Jamaica, that when they are kind of scrambling, when the pressure's on, when they're trying to see the game out and really make sure that their opponent doesn't score, they scramble a little bit and they're not as organized. And this was one of those sequences where I think if he has that play again, maybe he has like 9 out of 10 times, he heads it cleanly out. Like I said, like the way he's running, he could just put it out for a corner. Corners are difficult to score off of, saying.
I think that's it, 9 out of 10 times. If you come under as much pressure as Jamaica did in the final like 10, 15 minutes, because the US were very serious about, like, I remember, do you remember a moment when I called your attention to it? Tim Howard just collecting the ball and immediately throwing it back out. Let's go. US was really serious about upping the pressure, upping the tempo, trying to win this in 90. So if you expect to get a good connection on defensive header 9 out of 10 times, 10 crosses, you can maybe get one mistake out of him.
Yeah, there you go. And they put in 12, so it works out. 12 in the second half, rather. And so, I mean, I think it could have been handled much
14.
better.
It was 14 in the last, 35 minutes.
There you go.
Yeah.
And so,
again, Matt Doyle.
Instead of putting it clear, instead of putting out for a corner, like I said, he tries to head it, I think it might be Watson who he's trying to head it down so that Watson can then take it away. But instead,
Watson's the dad, right? He's the guy you give it to calm things down.
Exactly. But instead, it's sort of like Acosta, where he just gets a little bit too overly elaborate, he gets a little too cheeky, and instead of putting it out or putting it into safety, he puts it right into the path of Jordan Morris.
Actually, he puts it right into the heels of Clint Dempsey.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
So it bounces off of Clint Dempsey, and then Jordan Morris is right behind him.
I enjoyed Sounders fans trying to give Dempsey credit for that assist.
He may even get it just because he had a touch that went to his teammates. It's possible. I mean, you can argue with that. I'm just saying he may say that in the record books, right? And then Jordan Morris hits a beautiful shot. When you see the slow-mo from the different angles on this, there are, three defenders closing in on him, plus the goalkeeper, and he hits it with a bit of bend that goes around all of them, but also hits it hard. So I don't think anyone gets a touch. Not even Dwayne Miller in goal gets a touch, footwork or no. 2-1 United States.
Yeah, you're right. I was trying to think if anybody got anything to it. And they did.
No, the closest may have been Clint Dempsey, because also Jordan Morris runs into Clint Dempsey's back, right, to begin with. So there's a bit of confusion for the US, but then he recovers, he's got his composure. Not top right corner, middle right, I think it goes.
Yep.
And then he runs off celebrating. And we can all forget about the lack of marking on the Javon Watson equaliser.
Until the next time he's marking in the box, and then maybe I'll be a little bit nervous.
We cross all our fingers.
Yeah, and so I think he deserves credit for finding a way to get the win and finding a way to redeem himself.
JMO Smooth 13.
There you go. But I also want to draw attention to the man who tried to get that one, and instead, favorably, if you want to put it that way, got the assist. It's Clint Dempsey, who I thought once again justified his inclusion as a substitute, which is to say,
sure you want to do that, but
which is to say, it's not that he's not that good, he should be a sub. It's more so that when he comes in as a sub, he has an impact, and he's going at a tired defense who have kind of gotten used to one sort of U.S. attack, and Clint Dempsey is a very different type of attack because he has those little tricks and flicks that they're not going to be ready for. That I don't think anyone else in the U.S. has that in their arsenal.
Yep.
But he's also
unexpected turns that you don't see coming.
Yeah, and maybe I can't tell if it's just because they're tired and he's not, or if he's trying to prove himself, or if he really wants to get that goal scoring record. But he just kept making moves that other people didn't see coming and couldn't pull off, and he kept having little flicks, little stepovers, little just like he had that one outside of the football to, I think it was Jordan Morris, who then played in Villafaña. Villafaña had a heavy touch or a bad pass, depending on your perspective. Bad pass from Morris.
Yeah, but I know what you mean. It's an outside of the foot bending ball that like bent away from the defense, then in behind them. Yeah.
So I think we both were okay with seeing Clinton Dempsey start. I think that's what we predicted was maybe the exact same team except Clinton Dempsey comes in. And I still feel like Clinton Dempsey is a very important player to have in this roster and to have as an impact sub.
Absolutely.
There we are.
I'm sure he would prefer to start, but it absolutely worked.
Hey, man, he said in the pregame, he's a team player, whatever the team needs.
I did, just to dot all the I's and cross the T's, I did mention earlier that Josie Altidore was involved in the build-up to this goal. Yeah. He actually plays quite an important role, I would say. So he is, correct me if I'm wrong, my memory is, in the build-up, this ball is on the left with Nagby, I think. May even have Villafaña with him again, because he's always there like his buddy, right? Like his sidecar that accelerates beyond him. Altidore's like pressed up on Jamaica's back line. But then when there's no options for Nagby, it looks like Nagby's played a loose ball into nowhere, but actually Altidore's made this like quite clever run away from the defence backwards to receive it. So like he was open where before there was nothing. Yeah. So he really created an option for Nagby, then kept the ball moving, and then we're able to get it down the wing for that Zardes cross, which we've already discussed. Don't need to relitigate that.
Yeah, I mean, but it is, I mean, he makes that run, as you said, and I think it's like he drops it to Bradley. Bradley plays it wide to Zardes. That ball comes in. There you go. And that is exactly what I was talking about, to bring it full circle, with that, like, I think a year ago, 2 years ago, 4 years ago, whatever, he stands in the box with his hand in the air and screams for somebody to cross the ball. And I don't think anything comes of it. Or you know, maybe sometimes it does, but more often than not, it doesn't. So for him to kind of recycle the run and link up the attack, it's really exciting to see, especially going forward.
And speaking of Dempsey, that's kind of Altidore doing Dempsey's role a little bit, where Jordan Morris would be the highest player up the field and Altidore would come back and connect. And he's not as good as Dempsey because very few people are at that, but he's not, you know, there's a certain percentage of what Dempsey brings you, Altidore can bring you, as well as going and being a centre forward. Yeah. All right, so we end on a positive note with a Gold Cup. Everybody's happy. All right.
A Gold Cup, not as pretty as the one you drew. I'm just saying that from the very beginning.
I think they're identical. My chalk drawing of the Gold Cup was identical to the actual Gold Cup.
I thought yours was prettier.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so genuinely congratulations to the United States, because I know it did really seem like a big deal to those players to win the Gold Cup, so I was really excited about that.
I mean,
Tim Howard was grinning like he couldn't stop grinning at the end.
It's the first time Josie Altidore's won it. It might be the first time Michael Bradley's won it. I'm not sure. He might have been in that 2013 squad. It probably was. So, yeah, but I mean, it's easy to forget that like I just assumed Josie Altidore's won it before. He hasn't. And he hasn't, therefore, won any silverware with the United States, as far as I can tell, which means it's his first big award at national team level. And as he said in the post-match interview, like he's had a rough history with the U.S. national team in major tournaments with injuries and hamstring pulls. So it probably means a lot,
All right, Josie Altidore.
Yeah.
The future is now?
The future is, now. Why not?
Okay, the future of the Total Soccer Show looks like this. So Friday, we are planning our transfer spectacular. That's how I'm saying it.
Sure.
So we did a transfer show sort of, it's got to be a month ago now, right? And
not much has happened. It's all pretty much the same.
So we did it just before the Lukaku transfer, right?
Yeah.
So there's been that, and then there's been all the Man City spending. There's the Neymar rumour. There's Dom Dwyer to Orlando. There's so much to talk about.
Milan buying everyone.
All the players Milan have bought, So we'll get into all our favourite transfers, our most interesting transfers that have happened so far on Friday. We're going to have a show where we do some listener questions. We haven't done this for a while. We're going to have a show answering listener questions. We're going to do an MLS re-up. We'll get sort of back into Major League Soccer. What have we missed over the last couple of months? What does the second half of the season look like? We're also planning maybe a show where we try and pick World Cup 23 for the United States based on what's going on right now.
And coming up in the near future, we're going to do our Premier League preview. So we're going to look back on our predictions from last season, make some predictions for the coming season as well.
I like half of what you just said.
I'm pretty sure they were rough. I'm pretty sure they were rough.
We'll see. We'll definitely stick around for that.
I genuinely can't remember any off the top of my head, but I'm sure there's some in there, and I'm sure they're going to be embarrassing.
I think mine was about Wayne Rooney scoring a lot of goals for Man United.
Man, I've made that prediction like 10 years running. I don't think I'll be making it for him scoring for Man United this season. Pretty sure.
Taylor Rockwell, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Right back at you, buddy.
Listeners, thank you for listening. If you're a new listener, we'll hope you'll stick with us for the transfer show on Friday.
Yeah, we do.
Until then, it is goodbye from us.